everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Maria. So I wanted to give an update about Ghislaine Maxwell, who was sentenced to a much lighter but still harsh sentencing. And she was in court yesterday, and she faced some of her victims, and her victims got to talk to her and read their letters and make impact statements. And some of the victims really did want to see Ghislaine die in jail. They were outside the courthouse. They were giving interviews. They really wanted to see her rot in jail. But I really appreciate that Judge Nathan humanized Ghislaine Maxwell, and her defense team humanized her and her siblings, who came forward and said Ghislaine was a victim too. Now, they weren't saying this didn't happen to you, she's more of a victim, or excusing it. They explained how she was born. There's been different stories. If her brother was in an accident 2 days before she was born and went into the coma, or 2 days after she was born and went into the coma, everyone writes a different story. Even the wiki, which it's hard to figure out. But in her mom's memoirs back in the 90s, she says within 2 days of being home, nobody even glanced at Ghislaine, and they were so overtook with grief. The 9 siblings, the 15-year-old brother being in a tragic accident that left him in a coma. She had no care for the first 6, 7 years of her life. And her mother even said they knew that it was wrong, and they lavished her with lots of attention one day, and then the father would heavily discipline her physically, emotionally, and the words they're using is Ghislaine was groomed and brought up to service her father, and she would have serviced Jeffrey in any way, shape, or form. And this is where I'm going to get into a whole series on cult personalities. What Ghislaine said to her victims is, she's still saying not guilty, but she said, I am very sorry, and I sympathize and empathize with all of the victims here today and that aren't here. And she went on to explain that Jeffrey was her biggest regret in life, and that nobody would really understand, but some maybe, that Jeffrey was profoundly cunning, manipulative, cruel, abusive, controlling, and that he had this profound way of compartmentalizing what he needed and fooling people in his orbit. So in other words, I think what she was saying is he kept everyone separate from each other and played conquer and divide very well, which I was talking about Ariel Castro, and how he used Amanda and Michelle and Gina in the House of Horrors in Ohio kind of against each other, and set up Michelle as uh, um, a perpetrator by the girls meeting her and him telling her to do stuff to them or show them around and that kind of thing. So basically, she said, I hope it gives you some kind of assurance, safety, and closure to know that I'm in shackles and I've been given a harsh punishment. Some of the girls continued to roll their eyes. Eventually, we'll get the footage, but for now, we got sketch artists and descriptions. Roll their eyes at her, wish her dead. They just weren't having it. And that's when the judge said, Miss Maxwell has taken a good measure of culpability, and what her crimes were heinous in knowing beforehand what Jeffrey was, and for whatever reason, luring women in anyways. And she is being punished, but Ghislaine is taking accountability for her actions. So because of that, she got 20 years. Her defense later and her siblings said, people will never really understand this, but she was groomed by her own dad to be with Jeffrey and to be all things Jeffrey needed, because she grew up servicing her dad, and then she went straight to servicing Jeffrey at a time that she was the most vulnerable, when her dad had just died suspiciously, and that she felt he was murdered. The judge also talked about what she did give to the world, the Global Clinton Initiative, the Save the Oceans, solar energy, what she worked in, Clean the Oceans, what was the other thing? Global network, telehealth in places that she did the coding for, that just don't even, like third world countries don't even have, they aren't on the map, to get Doctors with Borders, all that done. So I mean, they did discuss all the things that she was doing in jail, trying to get, over 100 complaints. It wasn't just for her, like open raw sewage running through the jails, no personal items, guards that threatened everyone, just deplorable conditions in general. And that she was trying to get some good rights for the women and better conditions and programs into the jail to help women. So she just asked a little bit of mercy for people to understand that she was young, like some of them were. She also, her family and defense stated, the stories keep changing, the dates, the times, and that more and more women, the stories became more salacious as the mainstream media picked up on this, as the Me Too movement moved ahead and came forth. It was kind of like, I've talked about this before, the panic days. The women got together. Some of the women she's never met, she didn't know. They talked about how Ghislaine may have met 4 women through Jeffrey. And those girls went out and just started talking about, you know what, you can make really good money if you come with me and go here. So she wasn't really aware that there were some girls that stayed on the island, or that were brought to the island and didn't come back for a while. She wasn't really aware of all that. What she saw herself as is a before social networking with computer and Facebook and MySpace and all that came to be, she saw herself as a social connector. She was able to be in a room, in a corner, and see what your strengths were, what your interests were, what you were good at, and what you wanted to do. So if you played guitar, you wanted to be a guitarist, and there was somebody in the room powerful that she knew that needed a guitarist starting a band, she would hook you up with them. If you were an artist and you were doing shows and getting your work known, she would, like she did for Maria Farmer, she said, her and Jeffrey bought her artwork and said, he's starting a studio, this is what he collects, we can send you to school. Virginia, he was revising his masseuse parlor, and when she met Virginia, Virginia was reading a book on massage, wanted to be a professional masseuse. Okay, will come work for Jeffrey. He'll pay you better than Mar-a-Lago Donald Trump, and you'll get some real school to learn real techniques. So she really saw herself as a mover and a shaker, kind of the ability to just kind of pick out people that would work together and get stuff done. At some point, she didn't know if she was Jeffrey's girlfriend or not. Jeffrey's employees, like I said before in another video, called Ghislaine at times his main top girlfriend, his most aggressive assistant, his he told other people to address her as the lady of the house when she was there. She had her own home, her own apartment in Manhattan. She had homes around. And so she didn't stay there full time. And um, she really was aware that Jeffrey also had other girlfriends, like Rena O, who Virginia is suing, and Rena is suing Virginia. So she saw herself as maybe one of the women that was telling other women, hey, you can make a lot of good money here. And she knew that Jeffrey was perverted. She said, it took a while. She realized this is not okay. He's not okay. He's not happy with one woman. He's going for younger. He he's cunning, controlling. He's a predator. And that she did not know that when she met him. She fell in love with him. And she was actually biggest regret. So she said her sorries, but she made it very clear, her lawyer, her siblings, and her, that she did not recruit all these women or girls. Oh no. And that they went out on their own without her even knowing who these people were. And I don't know how to say it. She wasn't a very sexual being. And I can understand this, being that she grew up with no nurturing and touching and hugging and caring and whatever. She was left to the care of nannies, governesses, and her older sister and brothers. By the time she was 3 years old, her mother said she literally was anorexic and walked up to her and said, I exist, mommy. Mommy, I exist. She didn't get comforted and taken care of and whatever. She didn't. And so she would be a little bit not used to hug and touch and being close. So she didn't know how to be with. So the siblings, and one of her siblings is a psychologist. One of the twins, sisters, is a psychologist, husband. And she said Ghislaine was the most abused, the most preferred, and she was definitely groomed to go from our dad in a tragic situation right to a man like Jeffrey. And our dad introduced them. So, am I defending Ghislaine? No. But I think that, like I've always said, jail is not just, there has to be a punishment, yes. But jail for the rest of your life or whatever, it's just not the answer. The conditions that they describe that she's in is like Hannibal Lecter. Those are the conditions they have her in. Even showing up in court after being put in solitary confinement when she was not suicidal, having everything taken away from her, being put in a suicide smock, having to request a couple of tissues of toilet paper as she needed, a toothbrush, whatever, and have to shuffle into court in shackles and a suicide smock in this world is crazy. And so, they noted that it's beyond, and that Jeffrey did not get the kind of punishment that they have put on Ghislaine. And let's put it in perspective. There's nobody left to blame she's the last to the case. So scapegoat, default, all the aggression they had on Jeffrey, they're gonna put on her. But she kind of rose her hand and said, no. There are a lot of women here I never met. I didn't know. They're saying I was with them. No. They saw dollar signs and they showed up. And even Virginia said that there were people that were showing up. Hard to know. Some of these girls went out and told other girls, you can make quick money doing this. And and the one gal, I will continue to say this, one gal was 25 years old and up to 27 and recruited over 120 underage girls. And she never was confined. She didn't have to harbor. She didn't do anything. Jeffrey wanted to have sex with her and she said, it's not going to happen. She went to massage him. He rolled over. She said, not going to happen. She was of age, just like Ghislaine. She said, it's not going to happen. He said, okay, there's the money on the table if you know of any women that want to make some good money. And she went out and told young girls, over 120 of them. Now, I understand it's a pyramid scheme, but why are these other women that were of age not being held with the same accountability as Ghislaine Maxwell, especially the ones that also considered themselves Jeffrey's girlfriend? So Ghislaine said, you know, she might have been the face that some of these women saw and recognized the most, but they were all victims. And can we just close the chapter on Jeffrey and move on? Because he was incredibly, profoundly sick and abusive and controlling and cunning and manipulative and narcissistic. And that whole, what she said about his ability to compartmentalize everyone from each other and fool people in his orbit is very interesting. So I hope we hear more from her story. I hope she actually does sit with a therapist, a forensic therapist, somebody that understands cult behavior and how she grew up and trauma, and begin to explore, how did I go from that to a man like this? And even when I knew something was wrong, allow it. I find it, I think if we don't figure out how women fall in love with, I don't know, how do wardens fall in love with jail? People that have committed murder and will probably murder them and probably did. Like we saw with the Casey White situation and Vicky White. How do we explain this if we don't understand cult behavior? So that is what I know about Ghislaine Maxwell. I wish her the best. I wish the victim survivors the best. I hope they stop infighting with each other on who touched who first, who molested who first, and they can go on with some kind of peace and a surety of safety that Ghislaine is not a danger to them. Because that's what she said. I hope it gives you some pleasure, she said, knowing that I am harshly punished and I'm in jail. I found her choice of words very interesting because she wasn't believing that some of the girls there were actually victims. But she made that statement to everyone. I hope you find some pleasure. Almost like they're sadomasochist. They're the masochists. They are. They want me to rot in jail. and I never even met some of them. I don't even know them. I had nothing to do with it. So it's a very interesting turn of events because they were going for 35, 65 years, 55 years. I think I heard 55. 35 was the least to 55. I hope we'll find out more about who some of these women really were. And I'm going to be doing videos about Hugh Hefner. I got some videos coming up about Hugh Hefner, the girls next door, Bridget, Holly, and Kendra, and then the twins, and that lived there at the time, and just parallels again with this type of person, that one is a celebrity and acceptable on TV in front of our eyes, doing very bad things, and one is a evil, sinister, in a mansion, right? Okay, so just I'll be looking into those things, and I'll do some videos, and I'd like your comments down there. I'd like to know what in the threads you think. And I wish you a very nice day, and thanks for stopping in.